Hi, I'm Samantha Anderson, Director of Communications for Newton Public Schools, and I'm here again with Dr. Deb Ham, the Superintendent, and we're here to give you another update on what happened in the Board of Education meeting. It was last night. It started out on a couple topics that we talked about before, but I just wanted to refresh your memory. And as always, before we get going, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section. The first thing we talked about was submitting a bond.
Right.
We are planning to submit even if there isn't funding available. Can you just explain or remind everybody why we decided that?
Well, you might recall that in November, we were heavy into discussion about moving forward with a bond election this spring, and then found out that there wasn't going to be sufficient funding available. So we kind of have continue to work through it and refine it a little bit more each time. And as we have gone through that process, we have continued to look at what do we need to have in place, or what's going to help us in moving forward. So we determined that in the state statute that governs bond elections, there is a subsection D, for any of you who are interested in going out there and looking at state statutes, subsection D that states that if a district is turned down for funding because of inadequate dollars being available, they may be pre-approved to move forward in July. So what we are hoping is that by doing this, that we are positioning the district by getting our needs out there, and in a way that we can then maybe have a little bit of advantage in July, because we don't know how many people in the state or how many districts in the state are going to move forward with bonds. We know that there are limited dollars available. So we want to do everything we can to be able to get ours done. We also look at this and think at if we're facing this, other districts are facing this same thing, maybe facing it next year, that they're ready, their communities are ready to at least have a vote and determine whether or not it's something that they want to do. And so hopefully we're also calling attention to this statute, and hopefully our legislators can look at this and say, well, how does it impact our district, and what are the consequences, positive and negative, that result, and then are there things that we need to do to make the law better in moving forward. So we're just looking forward to having hopefully a little bit of an advantage.
All right. After much discussion, they kind of looked at the bond again and tried to see if there's anything. I mean, they spent a lot of time. The community vision team, made up of community members, spent a lot of time putting this bond together.
Absolutely.
But you can only look at it again with fresh eyes to see if there was anything that they could cut that maybe we didn't need, or that we didn't need as much. Can you just let me know what some of their decisions were?
Well, again, they wanted to stay as close as possible to the plan that was put forth by the community vision team, working collaboratively with the Board of Education. And they looked at reducing some areas, the possibility of reducing some areas in order to save some money. So one of the things that they looked at was in one area of the high school that is a newer addition, there was thought back in November of possibly utilizing that space differently, which would require more of a renovation. And so when that decision was changed, and it had to do with science classrooms, when that decision was changed, or that thought was changed, then that meant that space didn't have to have that level of renovation. So that provided then some dollars that could be removed from the overall bond. And then they also looked at a couple of other areas. One was the high school. The commons area in the high school is a tiered commons. And so in 1973, 72, when that was designed, we had many fewer regulations as it related to ADA. And so while we are compliant right now, we also wanted to look at how can we make this space better for our patrons and our students. Right now, so if there is some disturbance during lunch, for example, there are 3 different levels. Supervisors may have difficulty getting to a situation. Our kitchen is not on the same level as the main area. So when we are serving community dinners or those kinds of things, it's also difficult sometimes for our patrons to be able to utilize our space. So we're looking at leveling that floor out and making it all the same level with the hallway and removing those tiers. So in order to do that, we also have to do the kitchen. Well, one of the things that they considered was just not doing that. Is that work really needed? Is that something we could trim off the bond? After a lot of discussion, the board members, again, considering, the community and the needs and the plan for this to be a 20-year solution, a 15 to 20-year solution, so that we're not having to come back to the community. They said, if this is something that we need to do that would make our facilities more accessible, more flexible in how we can use the space, those kinds of things, then we need to do it now, because we don't want to come back and wish that we had done it. So they decided to go ahead and leave that in. So we'll put it out to the voters to see whether or not they feel like this is part of what they would like to have done. So leveling the floor in the commons. The other area that they looked at whether they could reduce had to do with the science wing. And again, this has been a top priority of the community and also of the board to have facilities that are modern and a space where a lot of really cool science work can happen. And so they talked about reducing the square footage and using some of the square footage in the high school. And one of the points that one of the board members made was, yes, we could do that. And we're also, again, with this 20-year vision in mind, we want to have enough space that we can have it for students and student growth. So after a lot of discussion around that, they decided to leave the square footage alone, and the science wing will be proposed as it was discussed in November. So we're really excited about all the possibilities there. One of the other areas that they looked at trimming, and this they did go ahead and trim, was the initial plan was for our HVAC replacements. And we're not replacing everything in the district. We're only looking at our units that are most expensive for us to repair and causing us the most difficulty. Those units will be replaced, and the other units will be put on a rotation, so that we'll be paying for those out of capital outlay. That will put us in a much better position moving forward, and we won't be in this position 20 years from now where we're trying to replace a whole lot of units at one time. So that being said, it saves about $2 million for us to do the work ourselves, which simply means we'll utilize bond funds, but we won't utilize architects, because all that design work has already been done. All they have to do is really decide what unit will fit in that space and put that unit there. So it saves a considerable amount of money if we do the work ourselves, and we're currently doing that work now anyway. So this will just continue what we do. So we're excited about that. We also looked at trimming a little bit of money out of Walton. That has to do with the fact that when it was proposed, the idea was to pay for some repairs that need to happen this summer out of bond money. However, we're not going to do that. We're going to have to do those repairs out of capital outlay because there isn't money. So we'll be doing that and doing it ourselves, so self-performing that work, and looking at utilizing capital outlay over the next couple of years to make any necessary small changes that need to be made in order to keep the building safe. But anyway, that's kind of where we are, and what the board talked about last night, and what we will be proposing moving forward.
Okay. Another topic we've brought up a lot in these is summit learning.
Mhm.
We did have some discussion and a presentation and even talked with some teachers who work with summit learning
Mhm.
every day. Can you just give us some of the information we learned there?
Well, we talked about the board, and let me say, for the last couple of meetings, we've had parents and even a couple of students come to the board and talk to the board about what their concerns were, what was not working well, what was working well. And so as a result of that, the board asked for a report. And so at last night's board meeting, there was a small report, and then teachers and administrators of the two schools that are implementing Summit Learning had an opportunity to answer board questions and also share information. So that was really good opportunity for some dialogue to go back and forth. We had identified some needs, both from the parents' concerns that have been brought forward and also from teachers who have expressed some things that need to change or be different and that they'd like to do differently moving forward. And so one of the things, there's a list, and I'm just going to kind of go through them a little bit here. One of the things that we talked about was communication. Communication is always hard. How to communicate, when to communicate, how much to communicate. And in some ways, we really need to do a better job of communicating with our parents, kind of what we're doing, what we're seeing, how we're adjusting, what's going well, what's not going well. And so looking at how can we improve that. And we'll be having those conversations over the next probably several months to help our schools and help the district to be able to do a better job. So Sam, we'll be reaching out to you and contacting you to give us some good ideas on how we can do that. And then we talked about the pacing of instruction. Pacing has always been a part of a teacher's life, and planning for how far we get during a year. Usually teachers carry that either in their heads or in a planning book. But it's never been really transparent to parents and students before. And now it is. And so some of our students are struggling with what that looks like to them and being kind of accountable to that pacing. And so we're looking at how do we help our students be able to work within that system and be okay with it. We also talked about screen time. Screen time is a big topic. We don't want to ignore research that's coming out about screen time. And this weekend, I spent a lot of time reading about screen time. And I read one of the most recent research reports. And one of the things that it talks about is that limiting children's screen time to school-age children to 3 hours or less after school. So this is a recreational screen time. So really looking at, as from a parent point of view, what can we do at home to reduce that? It excluded instructional screen time in the school setting. So again, it's something we will continue to monitor, something we will continue to look at as new research comes out or as we become aware of additional research. An area that parents were really concerned about was mentoring. In the beginning, they were really excited about their child having the opportunity to have one-on-one mentoring with a staff member, and then disappointed because for 10 minutes a week, and disappointed that that wasn't occurring at that level. And so we talked about other things that the schools are doing, including interest-based groups in which they're working in a smaller group with a staff member on something that the students are interested in, whether that's gardening or cooking or any number of other ideas. And then also a time in the morning where they have circle time. So it's more of a whole group idea, but they're also mentoring with students at that time. So how do we get the academic mentoring in, which is a part of the platform, is something that teachers are working on right now. And it may mean that we have to do some schedule changes. It may mean a variety of things that we need to look at in order to help achieve that goal of 10 minutes a week. Adapting resources is another topic, and teachers have always adapted resources. We know that we need to adapt the platform to be specific in addressing our local curriculum and addressing state standards. So teachers are now beginning that work. We also know that for some of our students, special education students, for instance, we may need to do more adaptation and provide more materials in the platform than maybe other areas of the content in order to help students be successful. We need to make sure that we're utilizing our MTSS system properly so that we're addressing the academic needs and the social emotional needs of our students in whether they're advanced or whether they're struggling. So we have this wide spectrum. We've always had a wide spectrum of abilities in a classroom. So making sure that we're using the data to help us be very specific in helping to instruct students in the skills that they need to have to be successful. So again, as we continue to get better at implementing this, as the teachers continue to work, and they've been working extremely hard, they will make these adjustments, and the system will be better for it, and our students will be better for it. One last area that parents have a lot of concern over would be data privacy, and we can certainly understand that in today's day and age when we hear about different data breaches and those kinds of things in the corporate world. We also are very concerned about that. Our state is very concerned about that and wanting to protect our students and their data. So we have in the state very strict, I would say, data privacy rules that we have to follow. And we work hard to make sure that we're compliant with that when we work with third-party vendors. So we work with a number of vendors that we upload student data to on a real regular basis. So whether that's OdysseyWare or Canvas or Naviance or Lexia or AimsWeb, I mean, there's a plethora of them. We always have a signed agreement that says this is how you're going to make sure that our data is protected. And so we take that very seriously. We right now are working with our board attorney and also KASB to make sure that what we have in practice is compliant with state regulations. And then if not, we will make the adjustments and communicate that out. And if it is, I still feel like we need to do a better job of communicating with our parents about data privacy. So when they sign off on something at enrollment, do they really understand what they're signing off on? Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't read all the fine print and I don't know what all the details are. So how do we get that information out to our parents and make sure that they are feeling comfortable and that we're doing everything we can to protect our student data?
All right. Well, last but not least, we had a few more gifts from the community. Mm-hmm. Can you just let us know who gave those gifts and what they're for?
Sure. We are always very fortunate. Our staff does a wonderful job. Our teachers reach out to a variety of agencies, and our community is great at helping out. So the first donation was from South Central Kansas Library System. They donated $500 to Slate Creek for their media center for resources as they began their redesign project for the fall of 2019. So we're excited for them to have those funds available. Then Cottonwood Pediatrics and Dr. John Dance made a very generous donation to Rayla Robotics for $3,000 to help pay for team expenses. And again, that is a program that we absolutely love in the district, and it's a great opportunity for kids to really get creative and do some very significant problem solving. And also then along that same line, Jimmy and Susan Wickesher also donated to Rayla Robotics $500, and again for team expenses. So again, we have a very generous community and a very hardworking staff that reach out to others to help support the programs and the things that they would like to be able to do in their classrooms or with their students.
Right. Well, that's all we have for you today. Our next meeting is on February the 11th. It's here at McKinley at 7 p.m. Thank you so much, Dr. Ham, for being here, and thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, just make sure you leave them in the comment section.